Okay, so next I want to talk a little bit about uh, Machiavelli, Hobbes, and Adam Smith. There's other people in there. There's Locke with the social contract, but um, but let's start with Machiavelli. So Machiavelli is an um, Machiavelli was writing to the Italian nobility in the 1500s. Yes, 1500s. And his most famous book is, and maybe his only book, I don't know, is The Prince, and it's essentially him uh, giving advice to the prince on how to uh, maintain power, including kind of some of what we would call PR, and it's a highly political book, and by political I don't mean Republican, Democrat, left or right. I mean it's political like a group of 12-year-old girls on the playground. What do I mean by that? The people, anytime you're in any situation, whether it's work, or it's a friend group, it's you know, it's I guess that's good enough. Uh, Dating relationships, you're always having to deal with other people, and I'm sure you have friends who have feelings and opinions, and they feel like they have to tell everybody all their feelings, all their opinions, um, and you can see how that ends up hampering them because either folks get tired of listening, um, or they you know tell you everything they're thinking, and so they never surprise you. Whatever. And then there are other people who, on the other end of the spectrum, if they have thoughts or feelings, you don't know what they are. They, don't tell you what's going on. Um, there's just all different kinds of people in the world. And if you want to be successful at your friend group, at work, in your relationship lives, in your family, you got to be diplomatic about how you do things. That's like literally what the word diplomatic means. Um, so sometimes someone will frustrate you, and uh, the right thing is to not tell them, because maybe you're going to get some sort of blowback, or maybe the person that frustrated you was your boss, and if you tell them, you're going to end up with problems at work, right? Sometimes you need to nudge a thing along, and maybe you're not the right person to do it. Maybe you don't have the authority to do it, in which case you have to kind of appeal to people and what they're thinking. And so, I guess I just described Bridgerton. Um, but when you when you when you go and read The Prince, what you see is him telling is Machiavelli, the advisor, telling the prince how to handle all these different situations. Um, how to make sure that the people uh, and your enemies fear you enough to do what you say, to um, if they're your enemies, to keep them at bay, if they're your subjects, to keep them uh, doing what you want them to, but also still liking you, because subjects that hate their king are sometimes a problem, sometimes cause coup. Um, he's advising the prince on how to use like your heavy to make something happen, and have the have the heavy end up taking the fall. For instance, I believe there's a couple of episodes in House of Cards on that. And I remember when I was taking this class in your seat, a couple of years ago, that professor I mentioned in whatever other video it is, Alvarez, I think it's the Weber video. He says he knew an academic dean who, kept a copy of The Prince on his desk the whole time. Um, I remember being a fairly young, naive, you know, uh, I'd like to think a sweet boy back in college, and reading the prints and being kind of utterly shocked at some of the things that that the um, that the book suggests for how to how to make something happen, who to give credit to, who to take the blame, who to give the blame to, all with the idea of making sure that you maintain your power, your authority, enough fear that people will follow you. It's a lot of fun, but it's just basically corporate politics 101. For something more modern, I don't know if I have a copy here or not. It might be upstairs. For something more modern, Robert Greene writes these books. One's about seduction, one's about the rules of power, the rules of war. They're much thicker, but it's the same. It's the same idea. How do you achieve what you need to achieve in a world of different personalities? Either honestly or honorably or dishonorably, you still need the same tools to make it work. And so that's the Prince, that's Machiavelli, political mastery and manipulation 101. But so he's writing in the 1500s, and then another one that you need to know. And so these guys, it's not even that they're connected, it's just that you need to know if you're going to go around telling people you're educated. So that's Machiavelli. The next one is Hobbes. And so there's a quote that you will have heard called "nasty, brutish, and short." And that quote comes from Hobbes, and I hope the title of the book is Leviathan, but if the title isn't Leviathan, the idea is. So Hobbes is making the case that humans are not inherently good creatures, and we need some sort of overarching mechanism or entity to keep us in line. So why are we not good creatures? Well, if you think about if you dispose of ethics, there we go, or morals or whatever. So just set aside your ethical feelings. It's easier for someone to, especially in Hobbes's time, it would be easier for me to walk over to the neighbors and take all their stuff that I would like than it is for me to go get a job, make the money, buy the stuff. And there's a couple of shows on TV about the Vikings, which are sort of fascinating. And for the Vikings, they had no moral qualms whatsoever, getting in their boat, going across the sea to, I don't know, Ireland, finding a bunch of monks and chopping off their head and taking all of their gold and whatever they wanted back home with them. It was just the nature of the world, right? The strong prey upon the weak. The lion eats the antelope. It's just the way it is. There's a lot of social Darwinism in there, and so in a world where in a quote unquote state of nature, since it's easier for me to go take the it's a whole lot easier for me to go next door and steal the next tribe's meat than it is to rush out and try and kill a woolly mammoth with my people. Killing a woolly mammoth is dangerous, right? Sometimes they kill your people. Much easier to just go get the meat from those guys over there. And if you start thinking about if you start thinking about it that way, it's almost always easier to go steal something, steal what you want, than it is to build it and make it. So Hobbes is saying that in the state of nature, whatever quote unquote wild humans would be, your life would be nasty, brutish, and short, because if instead of working for something, everybody is just trying to steal whatever somebody else built, then at some point people are going to stop building stuff, right? So your life is pretty mean, pretty low, pretty nasty, because there's just not that much good stuff in the world. It's brutish because you're always fighting each other for what little spoils there are. And it's short because, sooner or later you're going to get killed living this way. So Hobbes, by looking at that world, ends up thinking, so we need something like a state. It doesn't have to be a state. It could be a king. It could be a ruler. It could be really whatever. But according to Hobbes, maybe not even, but I want to say even the worst ruler, dictator, is going to be better than living in a world of no order whatsoever. And the reason that he uses the term Leviathan is because you really have to. He's trying to think of something that would. A Leviathan is a sea creature, a sea monster, and Hobbes is trying to envision something that's so overpowering and so overpowering, so strange and monstrous, that it will cow those humans in the wild living nasty, brutish, short lives into behaving. And so for him, any sort of like leadership, any sort of ruler that establishes order is being good for all of his people. And, why don't I go, steal my neighbor's TV? Well, the neighbor may fight me back if he has guns. That's part of the nasty, brutish, and short part. But, more than that, we have a very, very well established civil and political state here in the U.S., which is going to ensure that if I go in and get his TV, that I'm going to end up in court, and then I'm going to end up, paying fines, and if I behave badly enough, I'll end up in jail. And we appreciate living in a world where we have, for the most part, safety and security for both ourselves and our loved ones, and as well as our physical possessions, right? If you didn't feel like the state protected that stuff, why would you go out and try and make as much money as you can, so you can have a nice house, a nice life? And it goes not just from us not beating each other up and stealing their TV, but even to the realm of business, because there has to be some understanding that contracts are going to be followed. And so if I wanted to go out and build a business to try and provide for myself and my family, I need to know that if I make a deal with a vendor, that they're going to honor it. If I make a deal with customers, that they're going to honor it. And if anybody owes me anything, they're going to pay for it. That's the way it works. So for Hobbes, that imposition of order, whether it's democratic and hopefully egalitarian, like we would assume the U.S. is, or a terrible dictator, like Saddam Hussein. That imposition of order is better than whatever the state of nature would be. So that's interesting. That's Hobbes. I don't really have anything to say about Locke. I don't know him well enough. People pair them off. Locke has the idea of the social contract, which is similar but less brutal than my take on Hobbes. But the idea of the social contract is simply that, we kind of are voluntold, right? I want to say voluntarily, but it's not voluntarily. You're born where you are, and that's and the political order is the political order where you are. But we agree to pay taxes that support the feds, that support the local government, that support the cops, to protect our stuff, to build the streets, enforce contracts. We do all that. That's a social contract. If we give up our, ability to go break in and steal the neighbor's TV, I mean, we could do it, but you don't really want to because of those negative outcomes. You could not pay taxes, but we do like roads, and we don't like getting arrested and going to jail because the IRS is mad at us. The IRS is mad at us, and so that's a social contract. I think I think Locke is often thought of as less violent. The other one that people will sometimes pair with Hobbes is Rousseau, and I'm really not prepared to talk about Rousseau today, but so I will only say that Rousseau has kind of the kind of gentle hippie view of the state of nature, that there's enough bounty in the world that people can get along without violence, and that it's maybe, I don't know, yeah, I'm not really ready, but you can Google up Rousseau. Yeah, he's kind of into the noble primitive thing, which is curious, because if the state of man and here's where I'm waffling on this, if the state of man is such that we can live in harmony with nature, and it's individual human greed that causes us to be violent with each other, and this is why I have to check what he actually says. But then it's like, well, okay, then what is the state of man? Is the violence a part of state of man, or is that person defective and all of the other folks? I don't know. But anyway, yeah. So Google up Rousseau, Rossseau. It's French. If you want more on that, but you have to know Machiavelli for political machinations. You have to know Hobbes for the Leviathan and Nasty, Brutish, and Short. And then the other one, and we're coming forward kind of a long ways, 100 years or more, is Adam Smith. And Adam Smith, sociologists don't talk a lot about. The economists end up talking about Adam Smith. The interesting thing about Adam Smith is he's writing in 1776, which, if you'll recall, is the Declaration of Independence date for the U.S. And Adam Smith is the one who comes up with the idea of the free hand of the market. And depending upon how, if you guys want more on any of these, just tell me and we can expand some of these videos a little, I guess. But in the Wealth of Nations, he makes the case that it's really straightforward. And the example is guns and butter, which you'll hear, or a pin factory sometimes, widget factory. But if, let's see, if I need to, if assuming a blank world, if I need to build a house, and if I need shelter and I need food, then I need to go out and, either dig potatoes or hunt deers or whatever it is you want to eat. And I have to cut down trees and shape it into a shelter. And that's a lot of work, right? And if there's two of us, then both of us have to do the same amount of work to build two houses and kill two deers, right? Makes sense. Now, if I'm really good at building houses and really bad at hunting, then my house is going to be nice, but I'm going to be skinny and hungry. And if my neighbor is really good at hunting and really bad at building houses, then he's going to be shivering in the cold, but he's going to be well fed. So instead of one good house and one crappy house, and one good diet and one crappy diet, if I trade with him and I build all the houses and he takes care of the hunting and the food, then we get two great houses and two great diets because we swapped with each other. So in The Wealth of Nations, Adam Smith in 1776, which I think is great because America loves capitalism, and so it's easy to remember 1776. Adam Smith makes the argument that we get more prosperity. There's more for everyone if we if we exchange goods and services in that way. The other element is all goods and all services are scarcer than we would wish, and that's going to play into Marx and even Durkheim. Durkheim, when you get to him, he kind of believes that human appetites are infinite, and it sort of fits here, right? If how much house do I want? Well, I have this friend at work who just built a 10,000 square foot house with a $100,000 pool in the backyard, and he's got a 7-car garage and all these classic cars. I want that. That's what I want. What kind of food do I want? Well, I want free range, pasture fed beef from western Nebraska. I don't know. We want all the good stuff. The thing is, there's not enough beef for everyone to have beef, right? Beef. For everyone to have that, there's just not enough beef, right? There's not enough, swimming pool contractors for everyone to have my friend's new swimming pool. And so in a world of scarce resources and unlimited appetites, goods and services have to be distributed one way or another. And when you get around to some of the arguments about socialism, it's going to be things are distributed according to, quote unquote, fairness or need. What's fair and what's needful have to be defined in those systems. In a free market system, things are distributed according to price. If there's more people that want the beef from western Nebraska than there is actual beef to go around, then the price of beef goes up until people are not willing to pay that. And as the price goes up and people are not willing to pay those prices, and as the price goes up and fewer and fewer people are willing to pay those prices, there we go, then you're going to have people dropping out of the market until you have as many buyers as you have actual supply of beef. And if inversely, if something happens and you have a bumper crop, this happens to farmers all the time, but if you have a really good year and all the farmers grow all the corn, then there's more corn than people need, and so the price goes down. I'm not going to buy corn at $10 a pound. I don't know, I'm just making this up. But I might buy it at $5 a pound, and if there's so much corn, you can sell it to me for $1 a pound, and I'll use some of it for things other than making tacos. And you'll find other uses. And so between selling to our strengths, that's the wealth of nations, are the things that they are good at, the resources they have, and the fluctuating price of markets, open markets, free markets, you will have the most efficient and most prosperous economy, period, which should theoretically benefit everyone. Yeah, there's a lot of like caveats to that. Like I said, he's thought of as an economist, as is Marx. You get on to later on, and he's writing 50 years before Marx was, but what's interesting is that even though our free market types here in the United States nowadays, even though we definitely look up to Adam Smith, we Americans, and even though we believe in free market capitalism, as a kind of as a whole, it's important to note that not even Adam Smith thought a completely open economy was the right way to do it. He has a whole nother book called The Theory of Moral Sentiments, and in which he talks about moral sentiments. But essentially, he felt like Adam Smith, felt like you needed something like religion to keep people from being too greedy and ostentatious, from abusing the world, the system. And I'm almost positive, like 85% positive, that he also fully acknowledged that being stuck for 10 hours a day in a job doing one step of one thing would be a pretty meaningless existence, which is later expounded on by Marx, which you'll talk about in a couple weeks, but a little bit differently. So even Adam Smith, the person that coined the term the free hand of the market, didn't think a completely open market was necessarily good for a society and maybe people individually. There we go. I guess I'm waffling here because I don't generally like getting into the capitalism versus commie thing. I think I've said that in the videos before this, or the videos after. The left, right, red, blue kind of stuff we have going on in the States here, because but personally, when I look at it, you can't have if you have an overly regulated economy, absolutely, it clearly slows down. Regulation opens up the door to gray and black markets. It can definitely stifle innovation, and it can be it can go bankrupt, and leaves itself open to political corruption in ways that are kind of problematic. But at the same time, as soon as you say something as basic as, no, we're not going to have slavery, you've put limitations on a free market. So as soon as you say we're going to tax, something we're going to tax steel from Russia at 10% because blah blah blah, you've put regulations on your free market, and and tax imports. Um, oh, and it can be just terribly cruel. Uh, in a free market, so some of the states, the countries that the U.S. would call, socialistic, you could get health care, you could get retirement, um, you could get good government-sponsored daycare, and the many of the Reds will say, those systems are all screwed up, and I'm sure some of them are, absolutely. But they're not all. I've never heard an Icelander complain about free daycare. I've never heard them complain about their health system. It just isn't, it's not a part of what uh, they think we're nuts. And they're not worried about old people retiring. Have to, you don't have to worry about eating cat food because you didn't save enough money during your working years. But here, it's entirely possible that um, if you don't take care of some of those basic things, you can live in really squalid conditions. There are people in the broader region here who are living in homes with the water turned off. There are people living in homes that the roofs haven't been filled. There are people people living in the woods, like old-fashioned hobo camps, and in why? Because we're much more free and open with our markets, and that means if things go south, well, that's a problem for you, and you're going to have to deal with it. It is what it is. So that leaves me. God, this one's long, but it's important. These ones are important for understanding the basics of the stuff that came before the Industrial Revolution and all the folks we're going to talk about later. This last thing, I hinted at this. Social Darwinism. I want to say Spencer, but I'd have to double check that. I should have wrote this down in my notes. Social Darwinism is the idea that social Darwinism is the social side of an absolutely open free market, the social and political side. So basically, if we accept that the natural world can be a model for the social world, then the Darwin-esque interpretation of natural life, where the big fish eats the little fish, the lion eats the slowest gazelle. There's nothing actually, if in that world, it's whether you want to blame God or nature or happenstance, it's just the fact that the gazelle's gonna get eaten by a lion. That's the way the world works. If the natural world works, if we apply that to human life, then the only person that's gonna help the homeless dude living in the woods is himself, right? In the same way that the lion's got to eat, so the gazelle has to die, and if the gazelle doesn't want to die, he's got to run faster than the lion. Well, the homeless person in the woods, maybe should have tried upskilling their career before their factory got shut down. I know you guys had a rash of this in the 90s and early 2000s in this region. I'm from Nebraska, spent time in Pennsylvania and such, and and South Bend, Indiana. All across that upper Midwest, you had deindustrialization, factories shutting down, all through the 70s, 80s, and 90s. You know, I've spent my entire adult life and watching all the cities I love go to shit. And, you know, they've only started getting nice again in the last 10 years. Well, if you were an auto worker in Detroit, a steel worker in Gary, a slaughterhouse worker in Omaha, you know, when those jobs started shutting down, you know, and those businesses got moved elsewhere where labor's cheaper, you know, that's the lion, right, coming for the gazelle. And if you're the gazelle, you're the worker that's going to get shed because they're going to save, you know, $70,000 a year, and now you live in the woods and you're homeless. I mean, it sucks for you, but you're the gazelle. So social Darwinism is the idea that, you know, politically, economically, and socially, you know, we play these games, and the winners win and the losers lose, and that's just that. You know, having the state step in to take care of mental health or retirement or, you know, whatever else is like, you know, I mean, that's just, if you're a wildlife biologist, it's not appropriate to step in and save the gazelle, right? Because the lion does have to eat. Even if you feel bad you can feel bad for the gazelle, but it doesn't change anything. So that's social Darwinism. So in sum, today we talked about who did we talk about? The first video we talked about Gutenberg, we talked about Columbus and Western expansion. We talked about Luther and his 95 Theses. The second video we talked about Machiavelli. We talked about Hobbes and his Leviathan, Adam Smith and the Invisible Hand, and then a little bit on social Darwinism. That video short is as long as a friggin' class, so I guess it's not a video short. I should call it a video long. All right, thank you.